You might have forgotten about this, but believe it or not, COVID-19, protests all over the place, murder of Floyd, there's actually an election that's taking place. That election is taking place in the midst of, like I said, those items, not to mention 40 million people being out of a job and an eviction apocalypse that is coming next month. You would think that the presidential candidate that's running will be big, bold, expansive. I mean, after all, they have millions of people out in the streets. You can assume that, galvanize that, and you can kind of make the point that the public is screaming for this. But that's not what's happening. Joe Biden is hiding in his basement. And the interviews and the conversations that he's had has been utterly and abysmally embarrassing. The question that is being framed with all the consternation in the world by liberals who are looking at Sanders voters as if it's their responsibility somehow to get Joe Biden in office, despite the fact that Joe Biden doesn't represent the policy of the Sanders supporters. It's a weird quirk of our media space, especially in the way that they ask this question. And this question bugs me. It bugs me for a myriad of reasons, but one very particular reason, that it is Joe Biden's job to get those votes, not the other way around. That is not how political process works. You may have a certain degree of consternation in the fact that Joe Biden is not getting a quarter or a fifth of those voters. I would wish that that number would be higher, but nevertheless, it's what you got. Your consternation, I'm sorry, it's misplaced. Your question, I am sorry, it's misformed. And I'm going to correct Joy Behar here if I am ever so humbly to do so. And I'm going to make the point that what you're asking of Simone Sanders is backwards. There's a question there. There's an amazing good question there that you could have asked her. But you are so involved in regards to Trump and getting Trump out of office that you fundamentally miss what needs to be asked of her and what's the most rational thing in the world to ask of the person who's representing Joe Biden. I'm going to give you that question. This is the question that Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic Party, the Democratic leadership, everybody that is looking for those Sanders supporters to back them. The question is very simple, and I'm going to make that question. Any Sanders supporter that is considering voting for Joe Biden should wait for an answer, rational, coherent answer from somebody associated with Joe Biden, preferably Joe Biden himself, recent, asking him of this. And what I mean by that is the question that is typically phrased is misshapen. I just want to correct it. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. This video will be short because I intentionally want this video to be as short as possible because I want it to be consumable. And I wanted to make it very clear on why Sanders supporters should wait until you hear an answer to this question. Let's hear the original. And this is phrased this way, so I don't have to show multiple videos. Basically, the way Joy Behar of The View is framing this is the way it typically phrased. I'm going to change the framing of this, though, because I would make the point that this framing doesn't entirely make sense. Let's hear him. Simone Sanders having a conversation with Joe Behar. But listen to what Behar asks.
2016 election, you were Bernie Sanders' press secretary. We remember it well. And just last month, one of Bernie's top aides warned that a significant portion of his supporters are currently unsupportive and unenthusiastic about Biden. This is a problem. As somebody who's worked for both men, okay, how do you get Bernie supporters on board with Joe Biden? How do you get them to understand the severity of the situation?
Well, look, Joy, I think it's really about our campaign ensuring and being vocal and speaking directly to supporters of Senator Sanders and other former candidates in this race, saying that this is a place for them. And that's exactly what Vice President Biden has done. He's been authentic, but our campaign has done outreach with what I like to call meticulous surgical precision.
Meticulous surgical precision. Many Sanders supporters are not going to vote for Joe Biden. I'm upset by that. Now, what and how do you get those supporters? You used to be working for Sanders. How on earth are these people not going to vote for Joe Biden? Now, the question that Joy Behar should have asked here is basically, if Donald Trump really is the walking apocalypse, if Donald Trump is going to legalize peeing in everybody's cereal, he's just going to make it mandated. If Donald Trump is going to end democracy itself, Fair enough. How do you justify not supporting Medicare for all that has 88% support of the Democratic Party, the party to which you ascribe to, if that means organically bringing those Sanders supporters into your fold to beat Donald Trump, the person who you call the walking apocalypse? That's the question. Your framing is wrong. It's not Sanders' responsibility to get those votes. It's not those voters' responsibility to vote for Joe Biden. They vote for whoever they want if they vote at all. The question really is for Joe Biden. The question is really for you. How do you get those voters? And why won't you support policies that those people support? If indeed Donald Trump is a walking apocalypse. Meaning, I understand that you don't particularly like Medicare for all. I understand that you don't like the universal elimination of student debt. I understand that you don't necessarily like the wealth tax idea. I get it. I get it. You're neo-lit. But aren't you willing to sacrifice your ideas if it means holding back the night? If it means stopping the walking apocalypse from winning this race? How do you, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic Party, justify not supporting policies that would organically grow and unify the party and that has mass support and mass appeal, not just from Democrats, but everybody else? Medicare for All has 88% support among Democrats, over 70% support from everybody else. You need to justify that, because fact of the matter is the question is not for Sanders. The question is for you. If everybody is on board these trains, how do you make a legitimate argument to not be aboard those trains if it takes that to beat Donald Trump? You are basically telling the American public that you are not willing to support policies that the overwhelming majority of them support, if that means beating somebody who you are saying is going to destroy democracy itself. It is rational, as rational could be, to ask that question that way, considering the overwhelming majority, nearly unanimous support in the parties for Medicare for all. Your question to Simone Sanders should have been, how do you justify that? Like, share, and subscribe.